Okay, so for our entrepreneur meetup, we're going to continue talking Penta. It is hard for me not to just talk a little bit about HDHD, though. I'm so excited you're also excited to do the interviews now. I think that's going to be a huge, huge help. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm stoked. Like, you wouldn't even believe.
I'm super stoked too. Like, this has been, I don't know, it feels like HDHD has so many conferences within the conference, and like, part of it's like, oh yeah, great, talks on the main stage. Part of it is we have so many people coming and we've never really had organized interviews in the past. And so this is the first year. And I'm just so glad that you're kind of at the front and center of that charge. And I haven't replied to your email yet, but basically, as you may know about me, maybe it's partly being an intuitive personality or who knows what, I'm very permissive and supportive of any projects you want to do. So if you want to publish the content of the interviews in your magazine, that's quite all right. If you want to promote the magazine to the people you're interviewing, I'm also supportive of that. I mean, I think one thing I've learned from the entrepreneurship communities is that it's really not, it doesn't help anyone to approach things from a level of competition. Not that you and I even would be competition because we're doing different things, but like even if I had a human design magazine and you had one, I would still be supporting your magazine because that's how we all raise each other up. That's some Gate 54 wisdom right there. Hey
Yeah,
there, Nancy.
totally.
Hey there, Ricky. Good to see you. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. And yeah, I wasn't assuming that there would be an issue. I just wanted to, uh, as a sensing person, wanted to make it explicit what my intention was.
Oh, I
Because
love
yeah,
that. I love the explicit. It really helps me too, and just making it very like let's just make it very clear here. This is your project. This is what you're doing. Yeah, we were just chatting for those just joining. Now is going to be leading the charge of doing some interviews at HDHD. And by the way, Ricky, I meant to reach out. I've been trying to reach out to people from last year to see if you can come to HDHD. Maybe we can take that offline. I don't know if you have other plans at that time, but I would love to. Here, I'll just send you a chat
I
here.
wish I could. There's no way this year, next year for sure, but this year it's not going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just sent you a direct message anyway in that
Oh,
front.
thank
But
you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So just let me know, of course, and I'm if something changes and if it does appear that you would be able to make it. But yeah, we're having a lot of fun. I know Rachel's coming, now is coming, and as I was just mentioning, was doing the interviews. I didn't ask Rachel yet, and not you don't have to be on the spot here, but of course, Rachel, if you do want to do any interviews of speakers, go right ahead and at the HDHD or just let me know and we can set up those interviews. I'm most excited. Well, God, it's like I'm so scattered of all the different things going on that I'm very excited. There's like all these little miniature conferences with within the conference. Like that's one of them. We also now have a tribal support lounge, which is shaping up, and people are really getting into it. And we're going to make it like a really vibey, cool area for people to kind of get away from the conference, like basically to have their own little zone, and that's open to everyone. And then we have a non-sacral lounge, which is only open for non-sacrals. And it's also the first year of doing HDHD Cafe. And I'm actually working on the t shirt today because I get 40% off t shirts until midnight. So after this, I have to finish it up. But I've been working on that. We're bringing an espresso machine and some other things, and we're going to have people working. Yeah, make sure there's food at the tribal lounge. You know it. It's going to be,
So, like, I was
yeah,
gonna suggest, like,
absolutely.
if for the registry thing, like, I was like, oh my God, do they have a Berkey or like a water machine? Do they want like
Yeah,
I
anything.
wanted,
Can you message me on it on like Telegram or
yeah,
something? Or
like, do the water dispenser for like everyone in lounges because like, and then you could keep that like for your house or whatever afterwards. It would be amazing. Like,
well, we
I
can just
have a
use
water.
it every year. Yeah, let's put it on on the registry. She's talking about we made a registry like almost like a wedding registry or something this year for HDHD, so people can just buy
Like,
things. Yeah.
I'm consume play loving the registry. I'm like, oh
Okay,
my
good. Yeah, that's
God,
the first year we've done that, but it seems to be a hit. We already got a
it,
microphone purchased,
it's so smart. Like,
which
we need. I want you to put like, I was like, okay, so should they put water bottles? I'm like, no, they need a water machine. Like they need like, do you know about the water machine? It's the same as the Berkey. It's like basically like this. You could put canal water into it and it will filter it up like all the
It's just
like
called the water machine, the all glass
it's
gravity water purifier. That
it's
one.
so great. I love it. I use it as my major like water thing that I drink
Okay.
from. And the same shit as the Berkey. If you've heard of the Berkey, you
Yeah, no,
probably have.
I've used Berkeys. I've had people print them.
But it's the
Cool.
same thing.
Well,
Like how many ever of these you need in your different spaces. Like every single space should have this. And then like after the conference, like you can have these in your house and it'll be so
yeah,
good.
you know what we've done in previous years too is we have one person who comes to the conference, Kim Frick, although she has a little baby toddler now, so I don't know if she'll be able to make it. She's a reflector. She has graciously brought water from her Kangen machine, and that's been really nice. We've filled up like tons of Kangen.
Oh yeah, Kangen water
Or
is the most
Kangen, yeah,
water.
Kangen, whatever.
I love that fucking shit. But like this is like
Yeah.
like the second cousin down to
Okay.
Kangen. Like
This
yeah,
is just like the 1/10 the price version of it, right? Like
this
it
is
looks like
like
we can. Yeah.
you won't get any pesticides or
Okay.
like weird shit in your water, and like you can filter even like dirty stream water. Like if the apocalypse comes, like
Yeah,
HD
that
fuck
sounds great.
that Central needs multiple of these.
Can you
Yeah,
post
like
it into the chat? I see Nancy is asking. I found one. I want to make sure it's the right one. It's just called the water machine. Like that's literally just the water machine.
that's probably it.
Okay.
That's what they go by. It's the water machine, and it's like a beveled glass like
Oh
thing.
yeah,
I love.
that's the one. Yep. Okay, so I just posted one on eBay. I don't know if it's on Amazon too, but yeah.
Okay, I will buy this for the conference for sure.
We'll put it on the registry. We'll see what happens. You don't have to. But if there is if we find if they find like a really affordable one or something, that'd be cool. But okay, well let's get on with Penta stuff. I do just want to talk conference because I'm just so excited about it, but I know not everyone can go. I hope Ricky can pull some strings and make it. But I feel bad talking about it around Nancy if she's not able to make it, which, I understand because it's like a 25-hour flight. Nancy says, we need a fifth and sixth line heretic, truthful, common sense product supply chain. I like that. Well, for now's Human Design Magazine, she can have the fifth and sixth line heretic, truthful, common sense product supply chain column. That can be a column in the magazine.
That can totally be a thing. And we should have ads too and branded content. Anyway, that's
Yeah, there's a lot we could. There's
thinking
a
out
lot of
loud,
places we can go
lot we
with
could
it.
do.
Definitely. Hmm.
I'm wondering, Jonah, I don't know what you have planned for today, but is there any way, like, I thought it would be fun if we could do like a penta gap analysis for everyone who's here today, just so we can see it like
Oh, yeah, let's
action.
just do that. Yeah, all I have queued up is lecture 2 from Ra's series on Penta. I'm literally just going in sequence, kind of just covering the totality of his lectures on Penta. But I would love to do a gap analysis. That's great. In fact, I think I have most people's body graphs. Let me just take a look here.
Well, and we have 5 here today.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, yeah. So let me see. I think I have everybody in my Google Drive. Let me just take a look here, and I will share them. Okay. So here is Nancy. I'm just going to paste them in to chat. Okay. Let's see. Ricky, I believe. Yep, right here. Perfect. Ricky has a Penta channel. She has the 214. Okay. Let's take a look. So here is Ricky. Let's see. Do I have? Okay, Rachel Middleton. Yeah, I do. It's so cool having all these, having a lot of people's body graphs saved here. And then now I just have to see if I have yours, and then I'll post mine, of course. And I think yours was first entered incorrectly, and yeah, this is the right one. Perfect. I sent Name, who's doing all of our body graphs this year. I've been going over and double checking everybody's body graphs in the folder just to make sure that they are correct. And then I'll send mine. For me, I just go to the human design Wikipedia. I don't know how long that'll be mine, but which it's a funny story how that ended up. It's kind of basically I had Ra's body graph because it seemed only right to have Ra's body graph, but then it kept getting copyright takedown notices. Yeah, that was because there was somebody that was just being really annoying on the Wikipedia that was just like, you don't own the rights to this. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just put mine then. And yeah, that's how it ended up having mine. So if you go to Wikipedia Human Design, that is the body graph that you see there. And it's been like that for years. Yeah. Okay, so let's just take a look at what we have here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and like make a little notepad for myself. So Nancy has 8. And then she has 7 and 13. Sorry, I'm writing them out. And then, let's see, 15 to 46. I'm just writing out all 12 of the gates, and then I'm just going to add people as they have them. Okay, so Nancy has 8, 7, 13, 5, and 14. Ricky has 31, 15, 2, 14, and 46. So I'm just going to write that one out really quick. Yeah, I'm just kind of putting these in a little notepad. And then we'll see where the gaps are. Yeah, great idea. This is fun just to see, like, if we were to start a business together. Because, you know, part of it is we have to be an aura. Everyone talks about, like, does the Penta work remotely? Sadly, no. It really does change everything to be an aura. I'm sure there's some version of it in the mental Maya, but in the physical, it's so different. And in fact, Rob talked about, I think we might have even covered last week, like spending 70 to 80% of your 40-hour work week together in Penta as like a requirement, an absolute requirement for it to be effective. So
Yeah, and Jonah, like, how do you feel about the fact that, like, when we are like in aura with people, they're like greatly affecting us, whether we realize it or not? Like, even our, like, if we live in an apartment, like our neighbor, like
oh
across the
yeah,
way.
no, it is so real. It is so huge. It's like literally I've been in a duplex where there's a shared room and I couldn't sleep on that side, but even just sitting there, I was absolutely feeling the neighbor. Like once you slept alone for a
100%.
while and you start to notice this stuff. Yeah, big time.
What I have realized studying human design about the aura mechanics, because that was nowhere within my astrology studies or any of my other metaphysical studies, but like that, like key like point really changed everything for me. And like I will get 8 feet out of distance from people and notice a change as a projector,
Yeah.
as a mental projector. I will sleep like away, like in my household, and it'll make 100% of the difference between if I am not sleeping away. Like it is so profound, and I think this is one of the most underrated points in like uh like analysis when we're trying to take in our information. Like my masculine intuition is like, this is the sensing thing that is like really missed that
This
we
is
can.
provable. Yeah, this could prove human design to the naysayers, or this could somehow have some
Or
use.
this is the thing that fucks shit up for you, regardless of all your intuitive knowing. If you are in aura with another person, me as a mental projector, I'm like, yo, like no matter what you know, like that person is gonna affect you. Like that demon fucking sensory in your aura will.
Oh yeah, you're gonna feel the people that you're around. I mean, Ra always had his dark sense of humor and said, "Don't spend significant time around people you wouldn't eat in a desert island cannibalistic situation." So here is the gap. We do have a gap. We are a dysfunctional penta, but have no fear. It's not one of the worst gaps to have. Probably one of the easier gaps to have. We are the penta that would have, if we made a business, it would be hard for us to demonstrate the uniqueness of our penta for others. We need Mike. Does he have gate 1? Is he a gate 1? But see, then we have to kick somebody out because there's 6 of us. So who do we kick out? Then that's the next question. If we're going to engineer the penta. So we have a lot of 46 in this penta. Rachel says, I'll go. Okay, she'll go. Yeah, but don't we, I guess we need your 33. Then we have a dysfunction there. Nancy says that she gets kicked out. 2838 gets kicked out. Logan said that. Yeah, people kick out the 2838s because they're like, you're breaking everything. Hi, Liz. We're doing a little penta analysis. We just did a gap analysis for the folks that are here, and we figured out that if now Ricky, Rachel, Nancy, and myself were to make a business together, that we'd be missing gate 1. So we would have a hard time when it comes to demonstrating our uniqueness to the world, I guess, demonstrating our creative self-expression. But, you know, the creativity of the one in the penta is a little bit different than for an individual. You know, an individual is kind of like, let your freak flag fly. For the penta, it's like, can we call it creativity? Can we really call it creativity? It's alien creativity. It's the creativity of customization, how different cars can be customized in different shades of gray and blue and beige, frost, whatever the colors they use. It's like I have a car. I don't even know what color it is. Like it's halfway between beige, gray, and like light blue or something. I don't even know. So yeah, the question from Rachel, the penta is all about what? Well, the penta is about material survival, and there are many aspects to that survival, one of which is demonstration to others. So the 731 demonstrates how disciplined we are. The 3313 demonstrates how long we've been around. Like this penta established July 29th, 2024. Doesn't really sound that good, right? But in a few years, it'll sound better. In 100 years, it'll sound great. So it's like the established when the penta was formed. And then the 1-8 is all about, other companies have casual Fridays. We have casual Mondays. Other companies take people out to go to this restaurant. We take people out to, I don't know, some wild thing, right? Like other companies go kayaking. We go, insert weird, silly thing, right? So it's the way that the penta tries to demonstrate its uniqueness. And then Rachel comment, what is unique for another is, or what is unique? Would you like to clarify that, Rachel? That statement? Or if you want, you don't have to, if you'd rather stay off mic. But yeah, I mean, basically the 1-8, or is it just a joke because we're missing one? That's what's unique about us. No, but I think as a penta, we would have a hard time demonstrating that. Like basically each gap is going to be something we're missing. So what is our penta missing? The ability to differentiate from other pentas. So it'd be hard to differentiate us from our competitors. If you ever go to Burning Man, it's like a super penta thing. Like each camp is trying to show what's so unique about them, and they're trying to demonstrate, how different they are. It's a very like 1-8 heavy penta, environment of like, we're not like other camps. Other camps, they just do this, we do that. So it's all about, how different they are. But unlike humans, where the 1-8 really has a very wide variety of expression, in the penta, it's a very limited variety. Like if you build a house in downtown Santa Fe in a certain residential area, you're only allowed to choose from 8 different tones of beige. Like they don't even let you like just make it beige. They're like, these are the accepted beige colors. Like you cannot go, that's too dark beige. That's too bright beige. Like, oh no, you can't have like a yellow house. No, that's way too bright. Like it has to be one of these 8 colors of beige. So it's just kind of funny when you look at penta, yeah, I mean, yeah, they're very picky for sure. But the funny thing is really that it's like their penta version of creativity is kind of customization. So it really is like looking at an alien. Like I would urge you to think of penta as an alien life form. This is not human. Like Ra joked, to understand that aliens, look no further. If you're looking for aliens, look no further than your family, because your family is an alien. Not the individual members of it, but what happens when they all come together. Suddenly, when everybody comes together, people stop caring about the stuff that they care about as individuals. They start caring about stuff the penta cares about, and then like they leave the penta later, they're like, why did I even care about that? Like you can be like the least competitive person in the world, and then you're in the penta, and suddenly your penta is very competitive. It's making you competitive to try to amp you up to fight against other pentas. Now it says emergent entities like an egregore. I don't know how to pronounce that. Would you comment on that now?
I mean, it's the idea of I don't want to call it a group think. I don't want to be making false equivalence there, but basically something that emerges out of the composite of many individuals.
Yeah, right, right. I remember this from this. How do you pronounce it? Do you know how to pronounce? I'm gonna look it up.
I I mean, I don't say any of these words out loud. I always just read it as
Egregore?
egregore, but
It's probably
maybe,
egregore. Egregore, I think, sounds right to me.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I see because it's from Greek, so it would be egregoris in Greek and or in French. It was also used. Yeah, I've seen like books on these. I see a definition here: an occult concept referring to a collective thought form or psychic entity created and sustained by shared beliefs, emotions, and intentions of a group of individuals. So yeah, very, very similar. It is kind of. There's even a picture of one. This looks like an AI picture. People have had AI imagine what egregores look like. And it is pretty swirly. Swirly in the way that Penta is swirly. The way Ra describes Penta is that normally we have our throat, G center, and sacral sort of as this fundamental core of our energy of who we are. And that when there's two people together, it maintains that core. But the moment a third person comes in, this energy of the penta takes all three of the people's core kind of channels, I guess, but core kind of center column, and it takes them and pushes them out to the edge. It splays them into a sphere on the outer boundary of those people. So that the three people together, and then four, and then five, basically, like if a fourth person comes in, they're walking along with this energy column right there in the middle. I'm actually wearing my G Center shirt, so you can see they're kind of walking along with this energy column right here. And then the moment that they get into the group, that energy column is splayed out. So it actually like robs you of your G center, robs you of your throat, and robs you of your sacral, and takes all that energy and puts it into the outer edge of the bubble that is formed, which then begins to swirl. And it swirls around this vortex. And what it's doing is it's taking any of the penta gates, of those 12 gates that you have in that center column, and it's sharing them with everyone else in the penta. It's like the penta itself is getting them by swirling, kind of like taffy. And you know, the way Ra actually described it at one point is it's almost as if there's a hooked finger, like one of those come hither hands. You know, this hooked finger is like pulling the gates from each person and twisting them around into this vortex. So it is a really interesting vortex, swirly kind of thing, very similar to that picture. And yeah, the shirt says illusion of separateness, and it is very appropriate when we're talking about how we all mix like this in an egregore. And yeah, this is a shirt made by Shay LeBay. This was an HDHD 2023 shirt. And yeah, and this here says one round trip ticket to the Maya. That's what that ticket says right there. Kind of fun. One round trip ticket to the Maya. Yeah, but no, it's cool to think about the penta as this alien entity that sort of takes the energy of the people in it and swirls it all around. And so yeah, in our case, we're only missing one. Now, of course, if we were to look at Liz's body graph, she might have gate 1, but then we'd have to kick somebody out of our penta. We were just kind of talking about, like, you know, what if we were part of a penta? Online, none of this matters. Online, you know, I'm communicating from my voice, and I still have my energy on the inside. My energy hasn't been taken. I haven't turned inside out. The penta turns us inside out. It takes the center column of energy and splays it out to the edges of the aura. So Liz does not have gate 1. Yeah, so even if we switched you out for someone else, we would still be missing gate 1. Nobody here has gate 1. We do not allow the fully yang in this group. There is a no yang allowed on the door, I think was it. So I'm joking. Well, okay. Well, I think that was a fun game on that. And yeah, is remote interaction mental? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not aura. It might be emotional. It might even be spiritual. There might even be some physical interaction. I mean, neutrinos pass through me and then pass through you a moment later. And that's true for all of us. because neutrinos are coming from every direction at once. So it's a scientific fact that there's a neutrino that passes through me that then passes through each of you a split second later. Yeah, I mean, obviously we have physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional interactions remotely. It's just that the aura itself, however it works, its sensitivity and so on is somewhat proximity based. And so obviously something happens, remotely. Like I think we've all had this personal experience of thinking of somebody and they call a second later, or being tapped into somebody where something happens to them and a moment later you know it. And I mean, these things happen all the time. It's not that we're not interacting with each other as much as just the aura itself is its own medium. And I mean, I can sometimes tell, like, I've had long conversations on the phone with my hanging 12 and the other person has a hanging 22, and we're like feeling the 12-22 romance thing. It happens. It is transmitting information, and the tone of voice does transmit that information and things like that. But it's very different than when we meet. When we're actually in the room together. I'm actually sitting down next to them on a bench, or, it's completely different. I mean, especially being a generator, where I could be sitting next to somebody and feeling the full intensity of their aura because I have such an absorptive sponge aura. And yeah, now says it's not that she is in a remote version of my aura. She's getting a translation of my image, voice, etc. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. Like, could you be in a sensory deprivation chamber or tank? Somebody else is in a sensory deprivation tank. And then you're both in sync with each other? Probably, because the neutrinos that pass through you pass through them a moment later. So, like, there is a wavelength that you kind of tune to. And that wavelength that you tune to is going to put you in some sort of contact with that person. I mean, I feel that way tuning into the frequency of Ra. I feel that I can be sometimes going for a walk and it feels like Ra's right there with me. And of course, he isn't. He, quote unquote, is a disincarnate personality crystal, right? But it feels like he's right there with me because I've somehow tuned into Ra radio, and, I can kind of tap into like his wavelength and his frequency. And I think a lot of people can. Once you kind of get the number of that frequency, then you can kind of almost hear that person's voice in your head sometimes, and guiding you and things like that. People talk a lot about spirit guides. I mean, what is that if not a disincarnate personality crystal that we've tapped into the frequency of? So if that's possible, then surely it's a shorter throw to tap into the frequency of somebody who's alive here on the earth plane with you. Yes, now comments that tuning into someone's frequency, that some do this with physical tools such as pendulums. Absolutely. Well, let's read a little bit on Penta, and I think that was a really fun exercise. I will once again share our Penta gap. That was a good exercise. Now, thank you for that. Maybe we'll do it again next week if we have different attendees, or we can do it with Liz and put together a different Penta if she's here next week. And yeah, it would be fun. I mean, I don't think HDHD this year is the place to do it, but I have had ideas of like how cool it would be to engineer pentas and actually have them compete. So yeah, Super 46 and 14. Yeah, that's so awesome. All those 14s. I have 2, and I gotta say, I love everyone else has the 14. Like, we would be a very successful penta. Now said she'll leave voluntarily. Her channels are redundant. Oh, but you bring over half the penta now. Here's the funny thing is, now and Sean Walbridge together make the whole penta, because he has the 3 G to throat and she has the 3 sacral to G. So together, you guys could be in pentas with people who have no penta gates and channels. Like, I have a good friend who has no gates whatsoever in the penta. It would be funny for him to be like in a penta with, you and Sean. That would be a very successful penta. You basically bring the survival of the penta with you wherever you go. So, all right. Well, I'm going to look at my notes here and just kind of read some from, let's just see here. I'm going to read some from lesson 2. I think this is the new one. I've been trying to keep it up to date. Okay, yeah, I think this is it. Okay, so in this one, Ra wants to talk about the penta itself, and he basically said he did not expect in his lifetime to even go into penta, because it was such an effort just to establish the basic human design of the surface, that penta is such a deep knowledge, it's hard to actually get people into this, but you know, I think as we're finding, it is verifiable. I mean, it's about the aura, and people do relate when you say like, wow, have you ever been at a restaurant just one-on-one with someone, and then the server comes up and then you're automatically on best behavior and you stop talking about whatever you've been talking about, and you kind of, so like these are things that people know. You're saying Ra had a hard time doing it because he's such a manifester, or a hard time talking about Penta because manifestors are sort of
Yeah, hard time
foreign.
like
Yeah.
hopping to Penta as like an overarching influence because he's such a manifestor. And I agree.
Yeah, he's outside
Even
of the
as
Penta. Yeah.
I also am like, oh God, this fucking group sync is taking over. I hate this.
Well, I think anyone without a Penta channel, yeah, there is going to be an interesting thing there. Like now has 3 Penta channels. I have a Penta channel. I mean, Ricky has a Penta channel. It's when we have Penta channels, it kind of makes us a Penta person in some way. And I mean, whatever that means. I don't think we necessarily know what it means to be a Penta person. And I do like the idea that even if you do have Penta channels, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Penta is going to lead to your fulfillment. I mean, in some sense, when we're looking at Penta, what we're really looking at is a sort of dark art of human design, the engineering of Penta. Because human design is about the awakening of the form and waking up to your own inner authority. The engineering of the Penta is about material success, success in the material plane. And success in the material plane has to be rewarding for those involved because they're essentially pausing their progress as individuals in order to be rewarded. So the Penta must reward the people in it, or it's a worthless Penta. Yes, Rachel.
This is so interesting to me because I have thought so much about human beings and how this thing about how we're highly individual like interacts with the fact that we have to work together because we're so feeble and vulnerable and incapable of surviving on our own as like a species individual person. We need like the group to survive in many ways, large and small. So like this whole thing of the penta to me is so fascinating because it's like this like fail safe that we have in place because we are just newborns into the individuation scheme as human beings. We're like newly into the third density where we're individuating. And this is like me bringing in some masculine demon, no, masculine intuition, like other shit of like from Law of One, like how, like, as a species on the planet right now, as human beings, we are like our individuation, like our like personality of like individuating as a self is so unique and like new and like amazing and great, but also extremely dependent upon like the group to succeed. Like, so when I'm thinking about like all of these differences between like what do I want, what is the group like actually allowing, like as like when I say group, like what is human beings actually allowing me to achieve as a human right now. It's like very like this conundrum of like what's capable and like what is even available.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and one of the interesting facts is that investors pretty much very rarely, almost never, professional investors invest in a single person founder startup and are also very skeptical of 2-person founder startups. And the moment you have 3, people start to really trust you and invest in you because you have a viable chance of surviving on the material plane. But it's kind of like if you're in a post-apocalyptic situation and you meet one random stranger, are you going to trust them? I mean, then you meet 2 people, are you going to trust them? Then you meet 3, and the 3 are like, we have a chance. We need you to join us, join in our group. Or you meet 4 or 5, you actually have more trust in them. You're like, wow, these 5 people are thriving. Like, look, they're all healthy. They all, are. It's kind of almost just like the proof is that the multiple people are being nourished and surviving on the material plane through the success of their unit. And so the unit sort of proves itself. Now, granted, that is through the demonstration. And if they're missing any gates in those upper 6 gates from the G to the throat, they're going to have a hard time demonstrating that. You're going to look at them and they're not going to have 731, and you're going to say, this is an undisciplined penta. This is a penta that anyone can walk all over without suffering any, like reprisal or anything. Or they're missing 3313. You're kind of like, this penta has no history. They just came out of the blue. They haven't been around long. They have no staying power. Or they're missing the 1 like we are, and they don't have the full 1-8. And you're kind of like, I've seen this before. I've seen these kind of people before. Like they haven't differentiated. They haven't showed us why they have a unique direction that they're going. And yeah, pentas definitely do get investment more. Every now and then, I would say pentas get the most investment. 3 to 5 person groups get the highest. I'm not making this up. This is what I learned in Techstars. Then 2 person groups are the second, and then solo founders are people are very skeptical of, because the rate of failure of solo founders is an order of magnitude higher than non-solopreneurs. So, and now says this is interesting, especially in the context of great man media coverage. Yeah, well, everyone sees, Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or whatever this kind of thing is. But those people have probably had pentas too. I mean, they probably were a part of small groups that made it happen. Here's the funny thing is that you could literally engineer a penta where you hire someone for minimum wage. I'm not saying to do this, but as long as they're there in the room with you, it's like they're bringing the 214 and like you're the one, This is why it's really unethical for a penta not to reward everyone in the penta pretty fairly. Sadly, the dog does not contribute to the penta now. I do like that as an idea, but it doesn't. Even though you might have some of the gates, it's a different thing. Okay, so I'm just going to read a little bit from what Ra was talking about. So he talked about the pentagraph and how it's a convenient construct. I should have had this ready, I apologize, but I'm going to look up the pentagraphic. Well, it turns out there's a ton of graphic companies called pentagraphics. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here is one such pentagraphic. 1 second. I want to here we go. Okay. Copy image. Here, I'll just put it in the chat and then I can share it too. So this is a pentagraphic here, and this is kind of how the penta is usually shown. Oh, I just got your message, Rachel, about having a hard time getting in. I had a hard time joining too, and I tried to join. It said meeting in progress. I had to like close and restart Zoom. I think it just got into a weird state. So thank you all for putting up with that weirdness. So, okay, so this is the pentagraphic. Now what Ra says about it is that this graph is a convenient construct, and there are things that are very misleading about it. For example, that yellow area is not a G-center. What? No, I mean, we call it the G-center, but it's the equivalent of the G-center. And Ra loved to be hyperbolic and bombastic in his claims, but that yellow area is not a G-center. We have a sense of it being that in the sense that we're translating this image from the body graph, but a penta is not a slice of a human. It's also misleading in a way is the assumption that what you're looking at when we say the 15th or the 46th gate, we can see that they're not even connected to what is not the G-center, quote unquote. That rather than these gates having the potential to move upward, these gates only have the potential to move downward. So you can see that's not where the gates end, that's where they start pushing down. It's like it goes 15 to 5 and 46 to 29. It's like the commitment comes because of the 46 and the fixed rhythms come out of the 15. It's like pushing that energy downwards instead. By the way, this 14-2 and then these top 3 channels kind of forms a trident, and that's something that Ra loved to talk about. He loved to talk about the cross of the Sphinx, which is 1, 2, 7, and 13, and that the Sphinxes are the direction of humanity. Of course, these are some of the locks in the global cycles, and Ra made the weird, obscure comment that Neptune is the planet of the direction of humanity, which is just very weird coming from an astrology background where, I mean, obviously Neptune's only been studied for 150 years, but even still however long it's been, not that long, 200 years, but even still, like, we don't usually associate Neptune with direction. If anything, we think of Neptune as, I don't know, I mean, it is connected to the Maya. It's connected, so maybe in that sense, the direction of the world, that it has a outsized impact on the Maya itself. But it's just an interesting point that Ra talked about. When Neptune is in 14, we have a few years during which highly, highly influential people are born. And that's once every 170 years or something. I don't know how long exactly Neptune's synodic cycle is, 172 years, something like that. And so every 172 years, Neptune's coming along and going into gate 14. And for a couple of years, we have people born who are sphinxes. So they're born 4 times a year during that time for 5.7 days each window. And they all have 14 too. And they have 7, 1, and 13. And so they all have the handle and the powering of Neptune's trident, or Shiva's trident, he's also called it. And that they're just very influential people. It's one of those curiosities. Rachel comments that Neptune is conventionally thought of as lack of direction, but Neptune is about the greater collective, the deep DNA Maya. So yeah, it is an interesting connection there. And it's not necessarily related to Penta, other than the Penta needs a direction to survive. That a Penta not going in a direction is a Penta that's dying. It's kind of like those survival movies where the plane crashes and the groups split up and the groups have to go in a direction to try to find their way. They have to know the right way to go. But yeah, he's saying that it's a misleading graphic because the 15th and 46th gate, for instance, there's an assumption that these are gates in the G center because that's the way we see them in terms of a human's design. But this is not a human. It's not a human at all. So for the first dilemma is to explain that that energy of, let's say, the 15 or the 46, rather than having the potential to move upward, it only has the potential to move downward. So here he's taken away the connection from the G by truncating those 2 outside bottom channels. So you see a flow mechanism. You see this energy that's pushing downward from the 15 to the 5, downward from the 46 to the 29, and then upward through the agency of the 14th gate. So that's why the 14-2 is such a linchpin for the Penta, because if it's missing, the Penta has no chance of survival whatsoever. Like, any Penta, it can be dysfunctional, but when you're missing 14, this is a Penta that can't materially reward the people involved in it. So they're working and they're not getting paid. They're putting energy in, they're not being able to eat. They're not getting shelter. They're not surviving. And yeah, comment from Rachel that if the group has no direction, it dissolves. Yes, the 2 is the direction and the 14 is the money, the material, because it costs money to go somewhere. It takes energy to go somewhere. You need to eat and sleep and have shelter if you're going to rest and be able to keep going. It's the resources. Exactly. And so it's interesting also that because the 15 and 46 can't reach the upper ones automatically, they kind of go down and then up through the center of it. So it's this sort of like fountain look. That the fountain is, everything goes up through the 14-2. Everything runs through money. Everything runs through resources. And so if you're missing that 14, not only are you not getting the resources, you're not getting the 15-5 and you're not getting the 46-29. It's like the whole thing is collapsing because it doesn't have the material resources and know what direction to go with them. And I grew up in a family Penta that was missing 14, actually one of the only gates we were missing. And yeah, we were on food stamps and making toys and having a really hard time surviving as a Penta. I mean, it was not until we had other people around. For instance, when I was 6 or 7, my mom became a caretaker for an older couple, and I'm sure one of them had 14 because they had a lot of resources and they let us stay for free in their guest cabin and things like that. And so they kind of became like surrogate family members, and we had some more success then. But yeah, it is something to see just how that works when you are missing that. Yeah, a lot of 14s with missing 2. Yeah, Rachel says all of her family is missing 2. She has 14. And her parents do also, but no 2. Yeah, so you had the material resources, but not necessarily knowing what direction to go with them and not being receptive to the right direction. So, okay, we'll just read a little more and then we'll wrap up and take a break before Human Design Catalyst tonight. I'll just read this next little part from Ra here. So he said, I'd like to introduce you to a Penta, and he's showing this pentagraphic. And by the way, this was in September 2005, was the first time he ever showed the pentagraphic to anyone. He said the only person who's seen it before was Sarah, who I assume he's referring to his daughter, Sarah. So, who maybe helped him with the design, something like that. So he says, if you look very carefully, you'll see that below the 14, it has a relationship to the 5th gate and the 29th gate. Well, I guess that they're just in the same row together, 5, 14, 29. And of course, this is a slightly different graphic that I'm showing here, so it might not convey that. So he says the 14th gate has a relationship to the 5th and 29th gate. We usually see the 5th gate and 29th gate as gates that point upward. And that remains the consistent image when you look at the pentagraph, that it gives the illusion that it's moving upwards. But it's not. In fact, it's moving upwards toward the 14. Not so much even that, because he has to explain at a various level what these things mean. But you can see that the 15 and the 46 have no relationship to a pure G center in the middle of the penta. That is the 1, 2, 7, and 13, the Sphinx. That's the sort of the pureness of the G center. The love gates have been removed. There's no love in the penta. You just have the 7, 1, 13, 2. The pure G center, he calls it, the purified G center, that's purely about direction. If the other gates are about love, these are the direction gates. And so you can see that relationship moving upward from 14 to the 2, that connection between the 14-2 opening up into the Sphinx, but you don't see the presence of the 15 and the 46. We normally think of them as G gates, but here they're separated from that. They're taken out. They don't have that. It's like the G center's been purified to be purely about direction. He even says we're not talking about something that has gates, not in the sense that we know them. There are no real centers here. There are no real gates here, because the penta is an auric field. It is an aura mechanism. So, yeah. It's basically, he says it's really an extraordinary thing. And I think he might be showing another graphic here. Let me go ahead and show the other pentagraphic. So that's the one that's kind of the classic, but then there's this other one that has what looks like the base 5 glyph on it. And it looks like this. And this is an example with a few different body graphs kind of in there and so on. But you can see that big glyph in the back is, that's the base 5 glyph, more or less. And it's kind of an interesting connection there. So he says, so give a moment just to look at this. It's always nice to know, to be among the people who see something for the first time. So, I mean, well, here we are 19 years later. We're still pretty much among the people who are first seeing this. Not many people in the world have looked at penta, even people in human design. You know, it's something that isn't really looked at that much. And it's important to get a sense of the penta. It's not enough to just have an intellectual analytical skill. It's really about being able to analyze and engineer this thing and not forgetting what we're dealing with, and grasping that underneath the information, to be able to understand the mechanisms at a deep level. And with creativity and time, you can apply deeper understanding and so on. So this is just kind of Ra in his gate 26, just making sure people know that they're getting their money's worth and so on. He's like, you're the first people in the world who've ever seen this. And you can definitely learn a few things about it. So let's, I'll read one more little paragraph. I'll just read what Ra has to say about it, then we'll wrap up for the day, because I'm going to get ready for Human Design Catalyst. He said, the core of the penta is the penta vortex. And so I guess we see the 214 really is kind of in the core. Like you see in this graphic, it's clear that the 214 are right at the middle of the penta. This is the vortex of the penta. Like in the other graphic, it looked like it was below, right? It looked like it was underneath the middle of the penta. But here we're like, no, this is absolutely core. This is the middle of the penta, so to speak, right here in the middle of the vortex, the material and the demands. So beginning with the penta vortex, that's really the core. This is the place that is the central mechanism. You can't get there without the magnetic field. If you look at the lower left, looking at the 15th gate, the 15-5, that's universal to all forms of life. The penta takes the edges of the aura and whirls them together. This is something important. The penta is not stationary. It actually has a rotation. And its rotation is counterclockwise. Ooh, this is good trivia for this year's HDHD Human Design Trivia Night. I'm going to be like, which direction does the penta Except that people can get it. I think it's you have a 50% chance of just getting it right by guessing. But this is pretty fun. Which direction does the Penta's vortex aura rotate in? It's a rotation that is counterclockwise. And it's always rotating. So think about the way the penta creates itself. You have two people in a partnership, there's no penta, only back and forth. The moment you have three, you have a potential for this turning or pulling movement. The moment three auras merge together, two things happen. One is that a vortex emerges, and the second is that the magnetic field begins to pull. And it's tugging. Tugging is actually a better word, at the edges of 3 or 4 or 5 auras. And as it tugs at those edges, it pulls them. And in the natural movement, it's to literally see that this whole thing is moving around its vortex. It's not solid. It's sort of like those hurricane images that are always in the news, the satellite images of the hurricane with an eye on the center, with an eye in the center and the spreading energy field around it. That's basically what we're looking at when we're looking at a penta. There's this vortex, this eye, and the vortex is being fed by a magnetic pull. What do we know about the 515? From simple human design, what we know is that not only is this the channel of rhythm, but it's the channel of being in the flow of the universal life program. And it's also associated with magnetism, the 15th gate, with the aura, things like that, and a particular magnetic quality out of the monopole. So the interesting thing here is you're looking at the penta that is emerging from the life force of the others, from their auric field. You have the three with their vortex. That vortex represents the middle of a triangle. And, for three people, right? If there are three people, or a square if there are four, or a pentagon if there are five. And in the very middle it's basically, you can see that the pentavortex, well, he actually says something interesting. He says that the pentavortex is the middle of a triangle and the middle of a square. It's the triangle and the square. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I guess this is the bigger square is kind of the outer edges here where, but of course, I mean, it's not, it's interesting that he would say, I mean, I would think of it more of a circular thing, but the magnetic field is very important, and in the business context, you'll begin to see the importance of the 15. And you can understand that even though you're looking at an image which is standing upright, that what this is, if you kind of turn it sideways, this is pulling in the necessary energy to maintain the penta. Like imagine it kind of on its side. It's pulling in wealth. It's pulling in from other people. It's pulling in customers, pulling in people interested in what you're doing. I mean, I've noticed this at HDHD. I've done some talks in public. I was just joking earlier how at HDHD 2021, I was giving a talk on base theory in a little courtyard at a coffee shop. And none other than Jaime Lannister himself, Nikolai Coster-Waldau of Game of Thrones fame, which I'm a fan of, started to walk by, and he got pulled in. The 15 of the pentas pulled him in, and he started to listen to my base theory talk for a minute, and then he was like, no idea what this guy's talking about, and left. But it's from a business sense, you can see that you need a way to attract people, and yes, individuals attract people, absolutely, especially if they have 15, or now they have personality sun and 15. Yeah, absolutely you can draw people in with personal magnetism, but this is pentamagnetism. And so it's interesting just to see how powerful that is. And then to look at that from a business perspective. Okay, well, let's take 5 minutes. I will be back shortly for Human Design Catalyst. And oh, interesting. A few comments here. Now is saying, would there be any upside to having a gate or channel represented by more than one person? Yes, there is. That you can eliminate line gaps, and that certain lines are more sympathetic with certain gates in the sense that you may want lines 4, 5, and 6 in the upper gates because they're speaking out to other people, and lines 1, 2, and 3 are more foundational, and so on. And yeah, there can definitely be upsides. I mean, if you say, is there an upside to having more gates and with the same line? Probably not, because you kind of already have that covered and it's already being shared in a way. But yeah, definitely filling in the lines for sure. Line gaps also. And now comments, some traditions say counterclockwise is moving the physical to the spirit. Interesting. It's versus the spirit to the physical being clockwise. Interesting. Rachel points out gate 2 is in Taurus and 14 in Scorpio. Yeah, those are both kind of money signs. You can actually see all the fixed signs as having to do with money also, interestingly. It's harder to see with Aquarius and Leo, but it's there too. And yeah, Penta is the center of any group. Penta is the center. Penta is the center of any group, 3 or more, 3 or 4. And yeah, the archetypes of Taurus and Scorpio, fixed, earth, and water, and form. Yeah, so fun stuff. Okay, well, I'll be back on in a couple minutes for Human Design Catalyst. Great seeing you all, and hope to see you in a couple minutes for Catalyst. Take care.